We started with wrist and ankle weights. To date, we've sold more than 4 million pairs of those Bangles. People actually had an appetite for design in their fitness lives.
And what is your repertoire of products that you have now?
Everything. We make yoga mats, we make resistance bands, we're making dumbbells, weighted vests. If it's in a gym, we're thinking about it.
How much time did it pass since you conceived that idea until you actually sold your first unit?
It was probably about a year and a half. And so the first production run was going to be about $40,000 that we did not have.
How have you been able to market your product?
There was a lot of authentic endorsement of the product from trainers and influencers. We'd never done any sort of meaningful paid promotion.
Hey everybody, welcome to the show. My name is Andres Figueira and I'm going to be your host for the day. This show is brought to you by the Global Talent Company, helping fast-growing teams hire exceptional remote talent from Argentina, South Africa, and beyond. We connect companies with world-class professionals who bring skill, reliability, and a global perspective to every role. And just for our listeners, we're offering an exclusive 10% discount on your first hire. All you need to do is visit globaltalent.co, click Start Hiring, and mention the podcast listener discount when we reach out. And today, with me here, I am speaking with Max Kislevitz, co-founder of Bala, a company that reimagines fitness with beautifully designed wearable weights and accessories. So with that said, welcome to the show, Max. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
No problem at all, man. We're really happy we were able to make this work. And Max, just so that we can hit the ground running and get the audience a bit more in context here, would you be able to tell us a bit about your background, how you came to found Bala, and what the company does in your own words?
Yeah, absolutely. So I spent the first 12 years or so of my professional life working in advertising at big advertising agencies. And agencies tend to be kind of anonymous because they're making ads for, household name brands. But, folks aren't otherwise familiar with the agency that made them. But as a result, you can feel a little bit like a cog in a big marketing wheel. And after those 12 years, I met my then girlfriend, now wife, and co-founder, Natalie, who went on an extended vacation with me when I maybe had one too many glasses of wine and said we should quit and travel. And it was actually on that trip that we conceived of, redesigning and reintroducing wrist and ankle weights from the 80s, but making meaningful design improvements. It was on that trip that Bala was born.
Okay, so it's wrist and ankle weights 80s style, but with a new design then?
Yeah, so what Bala's ultimately become is a design-led approach to fitness equipment and accessories. And if you think about 10 years ago, you could walk into any gym in the world and it would feel like any other gym in the world. And the products that you used to work out with were all, hyper-masculine, really black, could be quite intimidating, and there was really no design consideration whatsoever. So you think of a very cool and chic Pilates studio, for example. Once upon a time, that Pilates studio would be beautifully designed, and yet the products within it are quite ugly, right? And uninspired. So we've sort of brought design to fitness equipment and accessories, but yeah, it started with wrist and ankle weights.
Okay, and what is your repertoire of products that you have now? Because also just so I can know, about how long ago did you found Bala? How old is the company?
It's about 8 years old. We'd started with wrist and ankle weights, and we'd really only thought it would ever be a side project. Our opening order was 3,000 units. We lugged the weights up to our Brooklyn apartment, carrying them one by one. And I think to date, we've sold more than 4 million pairs of those Bangles. And the realization was that people actually had an appetite for design in their fitness lives, right? That not everybody was interested in working out at a CrossFit, for example, in a really intense way, that there was room for color and design. So now we're making everything. We make yoga mats, we make resistance bands, we're making dumbbells, weighted vests. If it's in a gym, we're thinking about it.
How much time did it pass, Max, from when you conceived the idea on the trip with your then girlfriend? How much time did it pass since you conceived that idea until you actually sold your first unit?
It was probably about a year and a half, and we launched the business on Kickstarter because we didn't have any money whatsoever. We went on this trip spending our life savings to do so. And so the first production run was going to be about $40,000 that we did not have any amount of. And so we were able to successfully raise that via Kickstarter, and the first pair of Bala bangles were sold about 18 to 20 months after that initial idea.
And now 8 years later, I understand, as you mentioned, you have more products. And how has the company grown with you guys? Is it still just both of you, or how many people do you have helping you with this endeavor nowadays?
Yeah, it's interesting because, we made a decision a few years back to try to have a lean and mean team and rely on vendor partners for key sort of services and disciplines. So the team today is about 10 people, but there's probably hundreds that touch the business on any given day. They just, sit at our marketing agency or our Amazon agency or with our 3PL. Or with our suppliers. So the sort of corporate team is quite small, but there's lots of folks helping to make Bala what it is today.
And is the 10 people that you mentioned that you have like directly with Bala, are you guys working in a remote first environment, or do you have like a headquarters where you all meet up and make sure you strategize from there in person?
Yeah, we probably meet up in person maybe a day a month. Otherwise, it's completely remote. And I think because we're just 10 folks, everybody has quite a bit of autonomy, and there's not a lot of like group think, so when we need to make key decisions, it's oftentimes a group of like 2, 3, 4 people making those decisions. But yeah, it's largely remote. And, I think we've found some success that way. It's nice to get in person, obviously, but it's not a requirement.
From how you have described it to me, I feel that Bala is a product that is more tailored and designed for women. Could that be a thing? Or do you feel that you also serve the male demographic as well with your Bala products because they're liking it too?
Yeah, I mean, overwhelmingly, Bala is a kind of female first brand. And it shouldn't be terribly shocking, but I think the opposite was true in fitness more generally, right? I think what Lululemon did in the early 2000s was bring sort of color and design into fitness apparel, right? And we've taken a similar approach with fitness equipment and accessories. So by no means are we excluding men. I use our products on a regular basis, and I know quite a few men do, but it's definitely sort of a female first brand.
Awesome. Now, I totally understand that. And I kind of tried to check the page out a little bit before I hopped on the show. And I did notice that the designs, they look so cool. They look like from the future or something. It's really weird because I feel there are no edges.
There's no edges anywhere. No, I mean, look, fitness equipment tends to be really like technical and industrial, right? And we've all just sort of taken for granted that's just what it needs to look like, right? And so, even in beautiful gyms like an Equinox, it's still the same sort of technical design. And what we found is by bringing design to this otherwise utilitarian space, it actually changes what it feels like to work out, right? It's still effective. You're still sweating. It can still be exhausting, but you're a little bit more excited to do it than you would be when you're just in this incredibly sort of like uninspired environment.
I know everything's gray or black and it's just a bunch of metal clanking against each other. So it's
Totally. Yeah.
I
And look,
understand what you mean.
yeah. And that can be great too. But ours is just a bit of a different approach.
No, I like it. I respect the idea as well. And Max, how have you been able to market your products and what Bala is in it's not an opposition, but like contrary to regular gyms, how have you been able to differentiate yourself and rise above the noise?
Yeah, I think what was very cool and something we didn't necessarily expect with Bala was that there was this sort of like untapped need and potential for the sort of basic idea of like beautiful fitness equipment. And so that there was a lot of like authentic endorsement of the product from trainers and influencers to, kind of A-list celebrities that were all using the product. So, I think for the first few years of Bala, we'd never done any sort of meaningful paid promotion. But meanwhile, the likes of Kim Kardashian and Adam Levine are, using Bala on their social feeds in some capacity, right? And so there became this sort of cool factor associated with the brand, and uh, it sort of buoyed all of our other marketing efforts.
Okay, so it was more of like an organic exposure by people who have a high profile within the audiences, and that way you've been able to get Bala's name known a bit more.
Yeah, yeah, totally. Especially early, there was just some like genuine love for the brand because there weren't a lot of brands at the time speaking to this consumer. And so yeah, we had famous people that loved the brand, talk about it, and that helped quite a bit.
Well, that natural way of marketing a product, I feel it's the best way to go because it's just organic and people really when it's an honest review and somebody that is famous is actually doing that review from their own kindness of their heart, because I bet they weren't winning anything from it. It just feels so honest, and people tend to really fall for that because it's the truth. So I totally get how that helped. And when I was reading about Bala, did I read correctly that you guys appeared on Shark Tank? Is that right?
Yeah, we went on Shark Tank back in 2020, which was the weirdest experience of my life, but also quite cool. No, it's just you're on set with a whole bunch of billionaires that are peppering you with questions, and meanwhile,
Of
it's
course.
all being recorded. So strange but amazing experience. And we ultimately did do a deal with Mark Cuban and Maria Sharapova, who was a guest shark at the time. So they're still involved with the company.
Wow, that is so cool. Having Mark Cuban's endorsement and Maria Sharapova, who is, if I'm not mistaken, she's like this super famous tennis player, right?
Yeah, correct. She's like one of the winningest tennis players of all time, and she's also incredibly fashionable. So she's kind of the perfect balance of what we're trying to achieve from a brand perspective, like awesome athlete and, tastemaker as well.
At the moment, Max, what do you feel is working best from your marketing mix for Bala at the moment? Do you have any channels that you feel are working best for you guys at the moment?
I think the thing that we've always, fundamentally believed in is this sort of ecosystem mentality, right? That it's not necessarily about single channels in isolation from one another, but, the ways in which they work together. It's one of the reasons that even though Bala, has a beautiful website and, like a healthy social following, that we also sell to studios and, traditional retailers, because we find that, the whole ecosystem kind of works together. I think like, paid social, email, search all crush for us. But again, we're not kind of evaluating those things in isolation of one another.
It's the sum of all the parts that really helps out and provides the true results. I understand that completely. And also, do you have, Max, any example of maybe a campaign you guys ran that went really well and doesn't have to be on a certain platform, but maybe an in-person meetup for people to try out Bala's products or something like that? Do you have any stories that you would be able to tell us?
Yeah, I suppose there are two things that come to mind. One of which is Bala's done a lot of great partnerships with brands that tend to be much bigger than we are. And what we find is that, the bigger brand gets a cool sort of fitness association with Bala, and then we get sort of meaningful exposure from that partnership. And so, over the last year, Bala's partnered with Ralph Lauren, Pucci, the fashion brand, Spanx, and most recently
Wow.
Dunkin Donuts. And so those have all been incredibly fun and awesome. We do a lot of offline events as well. And those are, I suppose, to your point, like great ways to connect directly with customers and, get them excited about the brand.
Okay, and how do those offline events, how do they work? Would you be able to dive a bit deeper into that?
Yeah, I suppose like, it's sort of offline to online, right? Like, so they're like incredibly well curated events, and sometimes it'll be, just a lunch or a lunch and a workout or some combination thereof. But we we invite folks, that are brand advocates, whether
Oh,
they're
great.
influencers or trainers or, just folks that are passionate about the brand. And then, inevitably there's people posting about it and it's kind of amplified, right? So even if there's just 20 people at the event, we're benefiting from the exposure that those 20 folks generate. And again, it's just fun. It feels authentic to the brand we're trying to create, which is playful and irreverent, and kind of, inviting. We want people to feel like they're a part of it because they are.
Of course, it's not like creating any boundaries between the Bala consumers and other audiences. It's inviting everybody to feel a part of the brand, which I feel is super important. And also get that keeping it authentic, it just makes the brand a lot more real and people identify with real, because in this age of nowadays, it's AI deep faking images and images that are generated by Sora, and it's just like marketing has become a lot more polluted by not so many honest ideas. But this leads into my next question, Max, and are you guys leveraging AI in any peculiar or curious way for Bala?
The honest answer is probably not. We're probably behind the AI curve. I know that we're starting to explore the use of AI in like our chatbot, for example. Obviously we have a real life CX team, but we're exploring ways where we can just help the customer find the product they're after, more quickly and seamlessly. But from a content perspective, we're not using AI at all. I think at the moment you can feel when a brand does that, and it doesn't feel all that good. So we're trying to avoid the use of AI in any like customer facing way for.
Okay, no, I totally get that. And I've talked with a lot of companies that also have that same feeling as you do, which is the fact that, yeah, consumers aren't taking well to AI being used for advertising just because it's so noticeably fake. And it causes distrust with the brand once they start using that.
Yeah, absolutely. We're dipping our toe in, just cautiously optimistic. I think honestly, the less sexy stuff is what we'll start with, which is, tends to be process driven things. But like I'm still writing product description copy because, ChatGPT just feels really inauthentic. Even if it sounds good, it's not saying all that much. I'm confident in that, like in the next 6 months, it'll outpace us, but we're not quite there yet.
And Max, in terms of, I also want to know, you mentioned that right now Bala is 10 people. Are you guys planning to expand? And this could be internal with your team, or are you planning on creating new products soon? How does that work when you feel that it's time to keep growing?
From our side, just given that we started with a single product, and now we have, I think I've lost count, but 30 plus products, we're aggressively developing new product, right? And so for us, that's maybe the best lever for growth, because we have an existing audience that's passionate about the brand, that likes the product we have, and we could develop product of comparable quality that we can sell and grow as a result. There's not an immediate intention of building the team all that much, but those things change on a weekly, monthly basis where we might land a new account that needs more support, and we're hiring for it before we know it. So the good news is we're growing. We nearly doubled last year in 2025, and we're seeing more growth on the horizon this year. So exciting times ahead.
Amazing, man. Congratulations on the growth. And my this leads to my other question. Are you guys only available and do you sell to the United States, or do you also cater to markets in other countries, or maybe in Europe or Asia or something like that?
Yeah, I think international expansion is definitely something we're thinking about. We have a distributor that we work with in Western Europe. So, there is a retail presence by way of that distributor. We have a distributor relationship in the Middle East. And then, we're going to stand up some other markets in the year ahead. But every market's unique. And so given that we've tried to build a brand authentically, we don't want to go to a new market and, kind of not not understand the cultural nuance and represent ourselves in a way that feels inauthentic.
I understand you're 10 people at Bala, but in those 10, do you have a marketing team included, or are you using an agency or anything like that to help you with the marketing of all the products and the brand?
Yeah, so it's a little bit of both. We have three folks in-house that are dedicated to marketing in some capacity, two of which are more focused on brands. So I talked a little bit about partnerships. They're the folks that are kind of responsible for those partnerships and bringing them to life. And then one of whom is more growth oriented, is more of a performance marketing expert. And then we work with a ton of agencies, and for the most part we work with specialized agencies. So we have like an email agency, we have a paid search and social agency. I mentioned we have an Amazon agency.
Exactly.
So, the three folks in-house ensure that everything we do is on brand and is as efficient as it can possibly be, but we're relying very heavily on agencies as well.
Okay. No, I get that. And it's cool that you're able to get the help with all the legwork that is required from agencies, but you have three people designated to really make it sure it aligns with who you are as a brand and how you speak and how you want to portray yourself to the consumer. So I get that completely. Now that we're already in February, so Q1's flying by in 2026, but what are your main plans for this year and what would you love to accomplish?
I think the big one, and my orientation on the business is I'm the product designer, amongst some other more administrative things. So, my biggest priority is launching new product that the customer is excited about. So what that practically means is like getting into new kinds of fitness modalities. So we're doing heavier weighted products. We're doing a weighted vest. We're doing dumbbells, and bringing those to market in as impactful a way as possible is kind of number one for me. I think more broadly, it's just to continue the momentum from a growth perspective. So, yeah, that's kind of two priorities, but they're related to one another.
I like that. I personally, I'm very into calisthenics, so I'm always using weighted vests. If Bala creates one that I can wear under my shirt that doesn't even look like a weighted vest, you have at least one customer that'll be super happy.
Amazing. That's the goal, is to do a weighted vest that doesn't look like a weighted vest. And it's kind of easier said than done.
Oh my God, I know. I've gone to jog like 10K with a 10 kilogram weighted vest, and it just bounces against me. And I'm like, we should find one that is made with neoprene and that it's good to the body and that it looks nice, right? They all look so clunky. It's awkward. You feel like a military man.
Yeah. Yeah, no, exactly. That's the problem we're actively solving. Stay tuned.
Love that. And Max, I'm noticing that we're almost at time with the episode, but before I do let you go and I close this out, I did want to give you the chance to let anybody who is hearing us know what would be the best way for them to get to know the products that Bala offers. If they want to go and check one out in person, what would be like the best method they could do that? And yeah, any type of advice you could give to people who are interested.
Yeah, shopbala.com, BALA.com is our website. I think if you want to get to know the brand, I would check out @Bala Instagram. I think it kind of reinforces a lot of what we talked about today, because we use our social to kind of like share stories and anecdotes from customers, and you'll get a real feel for what it is we're trying to do there. So, and increasingly we're selling to studios and gyms, so you might stumble across the product in real life as well.
Okay, amazing. So shopbala.com if they want to check it out online, and if not, @Bala on Instagram for them to see what all the brand is about. To anybody who is interested, you just heard it here first. Make sure to go check them out. Max is super cool, and I bet their products are even cooler, so just give them a chance. And with that said, Max, thank you so much, man, for hopping on the show, for telling us your story and your learnings and insights with Bala. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
No problem at all. And to anybody who is here listening with us, thank you so much for also being here, for coming on every time to learn about the different personalities that we're talking to and all the different industries that we're learning about. So with that said, have a good one.